sometimes just out of, sometimes the story comes out of profound need, that we have a need for a particular story to fill a vacuum, and that story will suggest itself. If any of you have read the seventh telling, the Kabbalah of Moshe Katan, I know that some of you have. It describes that process of how stories come into being. And we've been doing this for quite some time here in this series, The Never Ending Story, but also in my one-on-one learning with some of you. We've been opening up the book and seeing how the book speaks directly to our particular need of the moment. It requires two datums. One point, a desire, and the other point, a launching platform. So, you know, with the high holiday is approaching, with the high holidays approaching, it may be that you have a particular need or a particular intent, a particular desire, a particular kavanah with which you might like to begin the evening. And you can raise your hand and suggest it by audio, or you can put it into chat, and that would be very helpful as a starting point. Knowing that I'm going to ask this each Monday, you might give some thought to this before, so that you come to a session with an expressed need. Well, you have an expressed need?
Do I have an expressed need?
Or a need to express? I need one point at least. Somebody who has a question, would like to learn something, something that the news prompts. Is that Sue who raised her hand, or Sue who is?
I feel like you got something.
Forgive me, this is my first session, and I was wondering if you could tell us a question from a previous session, just so that we might have a sense of.
So I'll give you an idea. Somebody wanted to know something about the Book of Life. That was a starting point. And if you look at the summary from the last session, there's a rather profound story that came out of that point. It was a story that's never been told before. Some of the pieces in this story I assembled, but the story itself was new. Somebody had questions about the Messiah, and that was a good starting point. Tell us your name.
Oh, Sarah, hi.
Who was asking?
Yeah, it was, I didn't have I mean, I wanted to understand better.
Diane has something.
Oh, that's Sarah Sharp.
So
Hey, Diane, did you raise your hand?
I will cede the floor to somebody else since
Okay, so again, if you would risk, sharing your video, that would be helpful.
I typically would, but I actually have a huge water leak.
I'll say
so
that.
Absolute mayhem.
No. Oh,
but
we have
I
a hand.
promise to next time.
Oh, Marion, how are you?
Oh.
Who's that?
Marion. Go ahead.
Oh, you're talking to me? Okay, I have a question.
But we can't hear you.
Okay. So I've been. Can you hear me?
Throw it in the chat.
Pardon me?
You're here. Great.
I don't hear.
Are you speaking to me, to Marion?
Wait, well, but that's not good.
We hear her well.
You're hearing.
Your audio is off some reason.
Let's try this again.
You would think we would have all this work.
Well, we had it working before.
It was working.
I know. Oh, okay, we're back. All
Are we
right.
back?
I think so. Marion, go for it.
Okay. I don't know how this will apply, but I will tell you it's something I've been wondering about. I've been doing reading and a practice around the 27th Psalm for weeks now. And I've been meditating with, being with, writing with different versions of it. And the one that seems to be the most traditional opens up with of David. And the other ones do not necessarily. And I'm curious about that of David. I've looked at many of the other Psalms and they don't open up that way. And
Okay.
this is rather kind of a bizarre connection, but because I have watched quite a bit from the beginning of The Handmaid's Tale, the association they make of the relationships is the man is of Fred or of somebody. And I know they're taking The Handmaid's Tale is extracted from the Bible in terms of their references. So I'm wondering about the of David.
Well, there are 5 books of Psalms actually, and Psalms are classified in various ways. There are of David Psalms. There's Mizmor David. They have different introductions, and what they are would be notes to the conductor. So they're essentially simply a technical opening. It doesn't mean that there is any property belonging to David. It means that this is a Mizmor David type of psalm, and it might be sung or played in the chorus in this particular fashion. Why are you reading Psalm 27?
Why am I reading Psalm 27? Am I quoting the wrong number?
No, tell me why.
Oh, because of the suggested practice, like listening to the shofar as part of an Elul practice leading up to Rosh Hashanah.
This is the psalm that ends with Lule, and has Achad Sha'alti into it. Maybe we'll find a chance to hear a particular version of Lule.
So I don't know if that opens up something that leads to a page in the book or anything, but that was something that I have been curious about, why that particular one, like this book I have right here, is not necessarily a book that I've been referring to, but it's a book of Psalms written, interpreted by Norman Fisher.
Okay.
Who's more far out than some of the other more traditional renditions that I've been reading.
Psalm 27 is important for several reasons. It's proceeds. It's recited during the month of Elul. It has within it these lines: Achad sha'alti me'et Adonai u'ta'avakesh. One thing I have asked from the Holy One, and this thing I do request, to dwell in your house all the days of my life. Yeah. That's a really wonderful platform. So I ask you now, this book, Tales of the Hasidim, that we've been using, has 2 volumes. It's 2 volumes in one binding. The first volume goes to page 318, and the second volume also to yet another 318. Would you choose a volume, please? Would you like to select a story from volume 1 or volume 2?
What's coming up is volume 1, page 27.
No, that won't work, because that's in the introduction. So choose.
How about 72?
How about 72? And we both turn to page 72. There's a 3-line story. That's it. The title of the story is Love. And it says, the Baal Shem said to one of his disciples, The lowest of the low you can think of is dearer to me than your only son is to you.
Hmm.
The lowest of the low you can think of is dearer to me
Mm.
than your only son is to you.
Mm.
Interpret that for us.
Say it again, Larry.
Please interpret that for us.
Oh, I have no idea what it means.
That has a lot of resonance for me unexpectedly. And I don't have, well, I have a son, a four-legged son, but and he's right here. And his name is Theo, which is, from my understanding, gift from God. That in this little practice that I've been in, based around the Psalm and the writing and the prompts that I've been invited to participate in, it's all based on a book called Language of the Heart as it relates to the Psalms for Elul. It's not an exact quote of the title. I've gone to some deeper, darker, painful places in preparation. I mean, it wasn't my intention to go there, but this is what's been elicited by the practice. And to think that the lowest of the low is the most lovable is so loving and kind and gentle as a container for holding some of this, some of what's been revealed and what's been felt in this writing, reading, meditating process. So that's the resonance it has for me.
If the story just said the lowest of the low that a person can think of is dear to me, that would be relatively easy. But it says that you can think of, the lowest of the low you can think of. I'm not quite sure. It's a case where I would prefer to have the original language is dearer to me than your only son is to you.
And is me God?
No, this me is the Baal Shem Tov.
Ah, okay.
And he's saying this to one of his disciples, so he's not saying it to a spiritual lightweight. He's saying it to pretty much of a master. You don't get to be a disciple until you're in a very, very advanced degree. It could happen like this. It happens that some of us are fallible, and we fall into not bragging about ourselves, but bragging about our children. So the difficulty is this disciple, as advanced as he is has a particular relationship with his son, and the Baal Shem Tov notes now the lowest of the low that you can think of is dearer to me. Let's see if we can spin a story out of this. Yes?
A smack from your mother is better than a kiss from a stranger.
Does everybody hear that? I don't know. The mic isn't faced that way.
Somebody said that?
What?
He's saying it right now. Wait, yeah. We have a microphone here. We're very fancy.
A smack from your mother is better than a kiss from a stranger.
A what from your
A
mother?
smack from your mother.
A smack from your mother is better
than
than a kiss from your stranger. Oh, that's an interesting relationship.
That's
your mother's right here.
Yeah.
Well, something my father said.
I see. Okay. We have stories. There was a disciple who had a very talented son, and whenever there was a gathering in his house, he would always ask profound questions of his community, and then be exceedingly proud when his son was the first to offer an answer. And the Baal Shem Tov noticed this. And he noticed this time and time again. He said to the disciple, so tell me, I see that you're very proud of your son's accomplishments. And he said, indeed I am. And he said, so tell me, what else are you proud of? And I said, the beyond your son. It seems like your son is the pinnacle of that which makes you proud. What else are you proud of? And he said, well, I'm proud of my wife, and I'm proud of my household. And the Baal Shem Tov said, what else? And he said, so I'm proud of my students. I'm proud of all the students that I'm privileged to have. Then what else are you proud of? I'm proud that we have sustenance to put on the table and the wherewithal to entertain guests. And what else are you proud of? He says, I'm proud that I have a location and a community that supports my endeavors. And what else are you proud of? And so they went through a hierarchy of what one might be proud of, and then one's relationships, and then those physical things that enhance life. And he said, proud ultimately that even at my age, I still have the ability to walk. And what else are you proud of? I'm proud that I have respect for the ground that I walk on and my ability to stand upright on it. And what else are you proud of? And so it went down layer by layer to the lowest thing that a person might possibly think of. That I'm proud to be here within creation and partnership with the Creator, walking through the world of His creation, and then back up through the hierarchy. So you go from the lowest physical thing back up, and you go from the ground underneath one's feet to the ability to walk, to the clothes that one is wearing, to the food one has on one's table, to the household that establishes it, to one's students, to one's children, to the abilities of one's children. And then the Baal Shem Tov says to him, and now you can be proud of your son. Now, take a few moments now. Can we do breakout room?
Certainly.
We're going to put you into twosies so you can talk to each
Also,
other
we'll do pairs.
and see if there was a story in the words that I just put together. Is there a potential for a story? It's not a finessed story, but is there a potential for a story in the words that I just shared with you? So we'll be in breakout rooms for a short time. Saying.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, we're gonna do breakout rooms, and then we're in person. Go into Chabruta pairs. You can go anywhere. Oh yeah.
Are we in breakout rooms? Yes.
Yes.
So
cool.
You peer off.
Excellent.
Here aloud now. You can't disrupt anything. You heard the words of the story. It's not a complete story. It's not a finesse story. Is it a story? Is there a story? There is a progress in there. And does it relate to the text that we just had? And if you would, share with each other aloud, personally.
Yeah. You can go to the couches. And
you can leave the chairs. You can just turn and talk to each other.
Do that also. And break.
Well, take the risk, actually share some words. In other words, this is your breakout room.
All right, bud.
Mitch, I was in my own breakout room all by myself. What do I do?
I'm gonna reassign you. Wait.
Actually,
everybody has to join the.
You can be last.
Oh, I'm moving you.
I'm so sorry.
Talking to myself, you know, it's okay. I needed some of my own guidance.
Wait, there are a bunch of people who are not. All these people are not in breakout rooms. Okay.
Put it with Jimmy Brown. These people aren't participating.
Or they're not. Well,
You're good. He's sleeping.
Okay, you're bringing us back up?
You want us out already?
No.
No, most people are in. It's just these
We're in.
five.
They're working.
Yeah, we're good. But there's one guy who I wanted to move. Yeah, they're all in there.
Hello. Well, we're a breakout group.
We're in breakout. We're doing it.
Okay.
It's really happening.
So, but we're in a breakout group.
We're in breakout.
So there's a when you have the lowest
Always fascinating. It's like you think you read the same, but there's innate.
Is that all we have left?
No, it's 60 seconds and then I close the room and bring everybody back.
Okay, let's close it up.
Yeah, we did already. They'll start coming back. Don't worry, they're coming. Once we close it, it broadcasts a message. 60 seconds left. So we're in those 60 seconds.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I said 1 minute, and then we waited a minute, and then I closed the group.
Okay.
Take care of the things you love.
Je m'en étais.
You guys haven't met yet? Oh my goodness. Ridiculous. All right, welcome back, everybody. All right. Are we back? We're back. All right.
Okay, we're back.
We're back.
All those physically present, we're back.
Just,
Okay, eventually we're going to learn how to do this.
yeah, it's okay. We're doing it.
We are doing
We're
it.
all learning together.
So I'm going to read the story again, and in my breakout group here, we realized how incredibly dynamic this story is, how much action and how much energy is going across these words. And out of that energy, it will be able to construct a story. The starting off place was Psalm 27. Marian had asked about the introductory words, Mizmor LeDavid or LeDavid. I forget exactly how it begins. There could be a Shir Ma'alot. There are many different classes of psalms. And then when you look into the psalm, which is done before Rosh Hashanah, the words that came out to me were central words to the psalm, which is Achat Sha'alti Me'et Adonai Ota Avakesh. One thing I ask from the Holy One, this thing I do request, to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. So that was what protruded to me from Psalm 27. Then we opened at random to this page to use this story, and it's a very short story. It's a complete story. That's one thing to understand. When Buber recorded this, he understood that this one sentence was a complete story. It is the Baal Shem Tov who says to one of his disciples, the lowest of the low you can think of is dearer to me than your only son is to you. We have an access here from the lowest of the low to really the highest of the high. Your son, at that particular moment. And the question that came up was, what is the lesson that he is teaching this disciple in that statement? And the story actually is a meditation story. So whereas we just did a breakout group in which you were able to go a little more deeply into it and perhaps become yet more confused by it, now to follow the progression. When a story is told as a progression, it indicates that it's a meditation, that you can relax into the story and follow it layer by layer. And so the Baal Shem Tov notices that this disciple has a habit of putting his son straight forward, and the son is an Eloi, a genius, and can perform at the highest level and does. And notices that the disciple is really proud of his son, and says, that's quite wonderful that you have a son like that. Now, other than the son, what next might you might proud of? Well, I'm really proud of my son, that he knows so much Torah. I'm proud of my disciples, that they gather around, they learn on me. And I said, well, other than your disciples, what you might be proud of? Well, I'm proud of my household, I'm proud of my family and my other children. I'm proud of that they surround me with such love and care and meet my needs. And what else might you be proud of below that? And he said, well, I'm proud of the community in which I live, that it provides for me a livelihood and a place where I can teach. And what else might you be proud of? He says, I'm proud that I have certain physical abilities that I can still, even at my age, walk and conduct myself and be responsible for my own well-being. And what else might you be proud of? And he said, well, I'm proud that I have clothes to wear. I'm proud that I have ground to walk on. I'm proud of, and so it goes layer by layer, where it comes down to I am proud that I am a sentient part of creation who can be in relationship with my creator. And the Baal Shem Tov and says, can you get, still 1 degree lower than that? And as he thinks of that, he says, if I go 1 level lower than that, I cease to exist. And he went there. And how long he was there, one doesn't know. And from that empty place, he called out to the Baal Shem Tov and says, you've brought me down to the lowest of the low. I don't know how to get back. And the Baal Shem Tov says, do you remember Psalm 27? And he said, yes. And he says, one thing you can ask from the Holy One. Go ahead and ask it. And so from the depth of his heart, he said, this is the one thing I ask from the Holy One. This is the one thing I request, that I might come into your house and dwell there in your gracious presence. And with that, he felt himself back into the process of creation and standing on the earth, and then he could delight in just walking, and he could delight in the fact that he had clothes, and could delight in the fact that he had a house, and he had a household, and he had a community. He could delight in the fact that he had students. He could delight in the fact that he had such a son who was such an Ilui, and he could delight in the fact that his son was learning Torah.
I know that this might not sound very spiritual, but something stopped in my heart with the opening statement because of the immodesty of claiming that he loved the lowest of the low more than this person loved his son.
Sarah, there are 2 things. One, we're not here to explain the story.
Okay.
We're here to use the story as a jumping off platform to find yet another story. Now, the analysis would be of the story we found, not the story that we started with.
Okay, thank you.
So the story that we came up with is a vehicle. The purpose of that story is to carry us to someplace. It may be that the story we started off with is less than perfect. And because of language, difficult to comprehend. So we simply dismiss those parts of it and use the story in such a way as to spring into a story that never existed before. Um, there are two basic ways of sharing. One is by imparting information. That is, I learn and I have expertise and know the Hasidic stories. I could say very, very well. I'm proud how well I know them, and I can explain them in terms of the Kabbalah and such, and impart information. And the other is to encourage empowerment and spiritual growth, that one jumps and takes risks to find a spiritual expression that may never have been expressed before. And that we increase news stories, that there always should be news stories. All the stories have never been told. In fact, each story generates myriad news stories. So the task of the evening is to come up with a story, allow a story to come through us. It isn't that we invented it. So in my process, I grab hold of the energy in this line from low to high, and create a series in which we go from the highest, in which he is very proud and proud and proud and proud and proud, and lowercase proud and sort of voce proud, and ultimately to the point where he doesn't exist anymore. And then from the place where he doesn't exist anymore, to come back not proud but grateful, that he is grateful for this and he's grateful for that and grateful for the next. And it may be, going back to the story, that the Baal Shem Tov's intent in sharing this with the student was to move him from a state of galva, from being haughty and being proud, to one of being humble and being grateful. One can still be very grateful for a son who is capable of forming on that level. But to be proud would be to separate himself from the divine. So the purpose of the story is to bring us down to that very lowest place, and then to reassemble ourselves out of nothing. Only this one thing do I ask from the Holy One, that I might dwell in your presence, Benoam Adonai, and the beauty of your radiance. That's maybe like where we would get to. So we have a question.
Yeah,
We'll repeat it.
I'm a first timer, so I apologize.
No, you're good.
That's all right. Sarah was the first time too.
Based on what you just said, I'm appreciating a different understanding of the concept of the storytelling and kind of the riffing of one thing to the next.
He's appreciating the storytelling and the riffing of one thing to the next.
But what I'm wondering is if what you wrote in terms of the 3-sentence, as you called it, a story, was less of a story and it was more of a really wise insight, which was to say, and this is maybe a little bit meta, given what you've just gone through. But I wonder if the Baal Shem Tov is saying that he is appreciating the human ability to have such depth of thought, that toiling over how deeply you can go to such a fundamental place of the last thought on the chain that you can get to is something so to be marveled, versus the innate pride that a father has for his son is almost, while it's something to be proud of, is, I'm not a father of a child, but I would imagine is probably easy to do, because it would come naturally to many.
I hear that.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Can I just say something?
Please, of course.
So I just want to note that this started first with tremendous awkward silence before anybody was willing to say anything. And then the question of what's the deal with this intro? And I don't know if you remember saying this, but you explained that it's actually the 5 different openings are each of the invitations of the conductor on like how we're supposed to experience these different things. And we're right at the precipice of the Yamim Noraim, of the high holidays. We're like entering into this meta space of like figuring out and contemplating our existence and mortality and all these great things. And I think the question actually that we started the night with was like, what are we being conducted to experience now? Like, what is the thing? What are we being called to experience during these holidays? And like, what, I mean, I know you took this on as a practice for Elul and for leading up to it, but what is it that we're trying to experience here? And this teaching from the Baal Shem Tov is like, it's really profound because it's the invitation of like, of recognizing the tremendous gratitude of what it means to just be alive. That's what the Baal Shem Tov was saying to the disciple. It's like, right, he's saying it to a disciple, he's saying it to a student, and he's saying the things that I'm so appreciative of, things that that are so not appreciated, are so dark for you. I appreciate that even more than what you appreciate to the height of your appreciation. So the invitation is actually, as we enter into the season, I think like tremendous depth of gratitude of what it means to be here in the world.
Indeed, and the purpose of the story is to carry the person on a journey to the place where every vestige of pride, which is self-centeredness, what a good father am I, comes down to an I that dissolves and disappears. And then only through the grace of the Holy One reconstructs. And then with each additional layer, there's a greater gratitude from the physical aspects through the emotional aspects, all the way back to where he was before. And he's still there in the room with his father, with his son, displaying how wonderful his talents are. But now, rather than being proud of that morning, which is haughty of heart, thankful, gratitude in the son, that he has a son who is capable of such learning. So the story is a meditative vehicle that carries one down and then rebuilds one back up again. It's a formula for a story. There are many such stories.
We have a few hands raised in here. Wale and Sue.
Somebody has a.
Wale, do you?
I wanted to say that I thought that what Sarah said was exactly what the Baal Shem Tov did, and he brought the disciple into a place where his heart was completely opened, and he could come back to his child and realize how proud he was of everything that led to him going down that hole and back.
Yes, I can't speak for what Sarah said, but she mentioned she had a difficulty in the story that was kind of a blockage. In learning Hasidic texts, very different from learning Talmud. In Talmud, you have to resolve every difficulty before you go on to the next sentence. And Adam and I were learning Hasidic text this morning. We came to a difficulty. We looked at it again, and just kept going. And eventually the difficulty found its resolution. It's a different way of learning.
I agree. That's why I think it's such a beautiful thing to go on this journey that he went on.
I mean, if some of you who are practiced in meditation may well have used that as a meditative vehicle. Perhaps not so easy to do. Marion, did we touch base with you for Psalm 27? Can we go on from there?
Yes, thank you very much.
Do you want to take Sue and Jonathan? I know you guys are Sue.
So I saw it as that each of us is worthy of love. That even those who are the lowest of the low, for somebody who's on that spiritual level, I originally heard it as God saying, I love the lowest of the low as much as you love your child. Al achat kama v'kama, how much more do I love each and every one of us, and each and every one of us is worthy of that love. And the line from Psalm 27 that was resonating with me is, L'cha amar libi bakshu fanai. My heart says to you, seek me. And I always love it because it's a two-sided line for me. It's God saying, seek me, it's repeated. And my heart is also saying, see me, to God.
Tradition teaches that there is only love, blessing, and goodness. That's it. So love is broadcast continually. It never ceases. Bracha, blessing, is broadcast completely. Shefa, the abundance that sustains nature, is broadcast without interruption. And everything in the universe receives it. Humans have this rare ability. We can turn our back on it. But if, no matter what our situation is, no matter how low, we can open ourselves to it and find it. We have some hands raised, so maybe we should attend to them.
Yeah, it's the Bacharta B'chaim piece, right? Like choose life. It's in this week's part also, that like God puts in front of us life and death, and choose life, and that's like part of the whole thing. But it's
Yes.
in our. Okay, wait, Jonathan, and then Ivy.
Yeah, so one of the things the questions that are brought up to me on a process was sort of this concept of revelation, how it relates to the Yamim Noraim, particularly revealing ourselves, and the process of sort of how that builds things down, including, God knows everything, but yet we still reveal ourselves, maybe is it for us, not for him, and sort of this process of revealing ourselves to other people, and that whole, as we, and sort of that whole process, and sort of, as you talked about the vessel, of sort of going through that to sort of get down to the essence, that sort of different conceptions of revelation and the impact that it can have, whether through story, whether through our actual interactions with other people, whether through prayer, to get us to a place of preparedness.
That's beautiful.
Can you put that into a single sentence?
Yeah. So the impact of revelation on preparing an individual for Yamim Noraim or for prayer.
I see. The revelation is ongoing. It doesn't cease.
Yep.
Now, it's the individual who has to be prepared as a receiver to receive it.
Mitch, I actually went somewhere different, more revelation of ourselves as part of this process. Mm-hmm. So not the reception of revelation, but actually us opening ourselves up for, whether it's through the mistakes or broken promises we made in the past, but actually confronting and that being a revealing in a different way.
So revelation in the sense of revealing. So we reveal ourselves layer by layer.
One and the same.
Revelation is a technical term for what's transmitted from the Holy One. Revealing ourselves, stripping away those layers so that we become better receivers for divine revelation. It's, as you say, it's a process from one and an ongoing process from the other. You want to suggest a page number and a volume?
Oh, wait, we have Sophie and Ivy first.
Oh, Sophie and Ivy. Sophie, you want to speak for Sophie, Ivy? Do you have a question?
Yeah. So I went in more than one direction, and one was contemplating what lowest of the low meant. Lowest in what way? I didn't say, but maybe it's always a struggle. Like, what do we need? Approaching the High Holy Days, a need to find and carve out space without the distractions, where you can be in the moment and be fully present and take joy in Rosh Hashanah and all of the parts. And there's some real lows we're living with that are very grand, very big. And how holy the Baal Shem Tov is, maybe, you know, where I struggle. There are things maybe that are so low, I couldn't travel deep enough to embrace and accept. I get all the puffy part and, you know, the arrogance versus gratitude. And every time you said, I'm proud of, it's like grateful, you know, but it's, what is the low? What if
in the story, now
in
you're
the
talking
story
about,
I could, but when you read page 72,
right?
Okay.
Now, there's a low experience in the course of a lifetime. The story, however, was going lower and lower according to the chain of hierarchy, from spiritual to creational to emotional to physical, and then building back up again. That's common to almost all the Hasidic stories. The other was, you know, the sense that love continually flows if one strips away the barriers and opens oneself to it.
Thank you for the beautiful story.
That story is in development. Hopefully by the time we do the summary, it'll be cleaner.
Thank you all for the development of this beautiful story.
Okay.
I just want to say that there's I mean, this is a very common thought in a lot of Hasidic and Kabbalistic teachings, but that, right, Bnei Israel finds God buried in the depths of Mitzrayim, right? That there's something about like getting to below rock bottom where there is like a breakthrough into recognizing that even the depths of despair of that moment is actually the starting point of redemption and all the things that come forth from that. So the Baal Shem Tov's acknowledgement here, being able to recognize and appreciate the vast gradient of those experiences, right? Once you're beyond the limitations of those experiences, you're in a place where you're able to appreciate the wholeness of all of those things. Right?
Yes, there's nothing so whole as a broken heart. Yes, well, that sums it up in one line there. Yeah.
You got that?
I mean, it's easy to say that, but what happens when the heart breaks is a place of absolute surrender. That one gives up the notion that one can do this by oneself, and then what happens is, as I said, love is always broadcast, and that broadcast flows into the broken heart. What is keeping it out of the cracked heart is the notion that I can handle this. When you get to the point that you surrender and recognize, it isn't that you recognize, the heart breaks. It isn't a matter of recognition whatsoever. It is an act of complete surrender. Now, any addict in appropriate recovery knows this. It's an integral part of the 12-step program. And it's an integral part of Jewish spiritual tradition. I thought maybe we could sneak another story in.
I think we have another hand raised.
Well, we have another hand that's raised, and then, if the rabbi permits, I have a good way of ending. Yes.
Jim, go for it.
Hi. So, good evening. I think that you probably could get to gratitude without being lowest of the low, without surrendering. I think it's a practice, but you don't actually have to get to the point of desperation. I don't know where else to go. The only place else is to ask God to.
How are you going to do it? You got 1 minute. How are you going to do it?
Maybe you can do it through meditation. Maybe you can do it through just a cosmic experience.
I'm sorry, I won't accept the word just. You know that.
Okay. So
But
what about this?
But also then you miss the opportunity to find the beauty in those moments of despair. Then that's like, right, there's great Torah on the Nazir, right? The person who abstains himself from grapes and sex and different kinds of things. And then the thing that he does when he re-enters society is he does a korban chatat, he does a sacrifice, a sin sacrifice. I think it's the Morinayim, right?
Yes, there's an awful lot of words you're going to have to explain.
Yeah, sorry. So there's a Nazir who like takes an oath and becomes like this dedicated person to God. And in that dedication, he abstains from certain things, from wines, from intoxicants, from different things. Cutting his hair. Thank you. Yes. Cutting his hair. And then when he re-enters, and then when he's done with his Nazirut, when he's done with that time where he's committed himself to God, there's a sin offering that he has to make to re-enter into society. And the Morinayim asks, why? Why does he have to do what has he done wrong? He just dedicated his whole life to God. What sin did he just commit? And he answers that what he did was he abstained from certain things. And in that abstaining from those items, he severed a pathway of spiritual connection. So yes, you can for sure tap the heights of spiritual connection through joy and gratitude and appreciation. And we don't need the despair. There are positive ways in which we can experience all of it. But that means that there's a whole realm of our experiences in this world that if we are only seeking joy, we're missing other pathways of connection. And I think that that's what the Baal Shem Tov is saying, is he's saying, I got it all. I'm on all fronts. And you're only in the place of appreciation through how much you love and respect and cherish your son. But I'm at a place that's beyond that. And the things that that bring you such pain and such despair, those are incredibly precious to me.
Wow. E.T., you're correct. Meditation, davening, which we know is a meditative practice, is preparation for all that. It is like going to meetings, AA meetings. It's all preparation for that. And then when that moment of despair hits, one is more practiced and able to do this by dint of discipline. The danger is the word just, because just makes a very difficult practice, which is gained only by careful discipline, seem like it's extraordinarily simple, like just do it.
Well, I have to think about this, because I think that one probably, if aware enough, can get it from revelation without going to the deepest, darkest. You can only get to the gratefulness from the deepest, darkest once you get out of the deepest darkness. You don't get it when you're in it. You have to make a step.
Notice in the story, there was a place of silence where the eye disappeared. That was the deepest darkness. And only then the faintest cry from his broken heart, which is what brought him from the process of repeating that was in the story. Or if it wasn't, it surely will be. We're into our hour, a little bit more.
Steve is very late.
Steve is here early. It's I forgot my line of thought, but that's not a bad thing. Rabbi, we can finish off Psalm 27 perhaps with Lule? When I think of Psalm 27, I always thought of Achat Sha'alti. Now I think of this. And this is a way for us to prepare the way for Rosh Hashanah.
Thank you, Mitch. I thought you were referring to Rabbi Adam a second ago, so I had no
So
idea.
we got
And then I realized it was-
we have more than one.
Or Rabbi Sue, I wasn't sure. If I was-
We have several rabbis on the screen.
Right. Lule, 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 emanti. Lule, 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 emanti. Lirot b'tuv Adonai, b'tuv Adonai, be'eretz chayim. Lirot b'tuv Adonai, b'tuv Adonai, be'eretz chayim. Kaveh, kaveh, kaveh Adonai, kaveh, kaveh, kaveh Adonai, chazak v'yametz libecha, v'yametz libecha, v'kavel Adonai, chazak v'yametz libecha, v'yametz libecha, v'kavel Adonai.
So that was an hour to prepare us for the holy days. Thank you for taking these risks with me. A lot of it's easier to impart information. I was with a teacher recently, and I shared that I found that what brings communities back to life is teaching what I don't know. Because if I admit up front that I don't know it, and then everybody participates with me because they don't know it either. And so we all have the same starting point. So in this learning, it's not quite the same starting point, but there's a lot of spontaneity and risk-taking, and I thank you for taking those risks with me. The person I was sharing with is a profound teacher. And he said, well, I teach what I don't know also. I prepare first. And I said, if you prepare it, you go in knowing it. And when you go in knowing it, you teach what you've already learned rather than discovering new things. So in the process of this, we have discovered the essence of a new story. Whether it will develop into a story of lasting value, I don't know. But we'll refine it in the summary. If eventually we do this long enough, we may have another collection of stories. We'll say. Thank you all. L'shana tova tepatevul b'sefer hachayim tovi.
Not too bad, everybody.
Not too bad.
Recording stuff.
And we have to say goodnight to Ivy.